John Clayton, the professor, going to join us to talk a little NFL. Washington Post, check out his latest column on the NFL playoff races. He says these 5 contenders have the most reasons to worry. I would doubt that the Eagles are included as a contender and have to worry, but they've got other worries, as we've talked a lot about throughout the course of this year. But it's like this chicken or egg theory. Is it the coach? Is it the quarterback? Is it Howie Roseman? Why are the Eagles a team that many people thought would be a contender? What's the fatal flaw that they have and others, as we are now done 11 weeks? You know, John Clayton, who's a great follow for all you NFL fans out there on a Sunday, and he tweeted out, just simple, Carson Wentz was looking bad, but he's getting worse. And that was an eye-opener because, yeah, John, you're right. He is getting worse. And are we at the point now where he's getting worse is supposed to be a major form of concern here?
I think you have to be because, I mean, here's a $32 million quarterback, and since the Super Bowl, which, of course, unfortunately, he was not able to play, I mean, he has a losing record. And now you look at the numbers, and they're coming down each week. Now, again, there's a lot more than just Carson Wentz, as we've talked about before, but now it's at the stage where it's like he's so affected by it, he's not performing at any kind of a good level. I mean, you can see the mistakes, you can see the bad throws, you can see the bad decisions, you can see the turnovers. I mean, 12 interceptions, 5 fumbles, 35 times he's been sacked. Now, again, the sacks, I think, are a byproduct of the offensive line injuries, and Jason Peters not. And by the way, is Jason going to start this week, or is it because I guess the feeling because he's really been bad, but overall it's a mess.
Sure is, and we know the contract situation for Carson. I mean, they're going to take a major hit if they were to get out of that. So it looks like this is a marriage that they're kind of stuck in for a while.
Yeah, it's like, although I guess in some ways, like it's a Jimmy Garoppolo situation, but there seems to be growing sentiment that they may just take the hit and move on or do something because, Jimmy's missed so much time with injuries and he's got the high ankle sprain and he hasn't done well and their season's in the tank right now. And so, there's with the cap going, and again, Eagles are in much worse shape than the 49ers because what is it? I have to get my updated numbers right now, but $81 to $91 million over next year's cap. Now, Howie Roseman is one of the best in the game as far as, making the cap work, but there's going to be so many casualties on this roster. And again, it's one of the oldest rosters in the NFL. I mean, what is it, like 27-8 or something like that, or 27-5. And so there's going to be a lot of change. But now, do you include Carson in that change? And, you would have to think it's not a real thought, but maybe it is.
Now, John, you just said something that perks up our ears here in the Delaware Valley. You said Howie Roseman is one of the best in the game when it comes to working the cap. Many people here feel that Roseman has been a problem on draft day. I think if you know the organization, though, it's a little muddy in that room on who makes those picks. So how is Roseman? Is he viewed as just a cap guy? Is he viewed as a talent evaluator? Does he run the draft for the Eagles? Or are the Eagles a mystery on who does what when it comes to the front office?
Yeah, I think you have to say it's a mystery because, I mean, Howie being the numbers guy, I mean, he's more into the numbers than he is with the eye on scouting. But the course is, I mean, he's run the office, and so it's a matter that as long as he has the right people under him as scouting, helping give him the ideas like, okay, here's what we should do, and they do it. But then, I mean, you look at the drafts and, you have to kind of say there's some big question marks right now. And particularly, I mean, you look at the wide receiver drafts over the last couple of years and, with the Whiteside draft, I mean, you have to say that that didn't go well because look at all the second round success stories, DK Metcalf included, and then you go up and down that second round and see how good that round turned out to be. And, Whiteside, just didn't do it last year. And now he can be a healthy scratch as an inactive. And so that's got to be a little bit scary.
We've been going back and forth about Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz, who is at fault more, even though we both acknowledge they have been doing terrible as a duo. But how do you view Doug Peterson's impact on Carson Wentz's struggles? And do you think it's possible that a change of play calling could make a big difference?
No, I don't. I mean, I would say if there's a change in play calling, it would be the same result as the Chicago Bears when Matt Nagy gave it over to Bill Lazor. And you see they didn't have a running game. They didn't have anything more than Allen Robinson. Jimmy Graham's old, the offensive line. And that's really, I think, one of the big things right now to look at. When you're looking at a lot of these teams that are struggling on offense, where are they on the offensive line? I mean, you saw the problems in Dallas when they were down 4 starters. You've seen it each week with as many as 4 starters down with the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, you saw it in Chicago with their injured and battered offensive line, and that plays it. And so, if you have, and again, I mean, Sanders has done a pretty good job, I think, as a running back, but he's certainly not up to the Pro Bowl standards that you'd like to have. But when you don't have the running game consistently, you have offensive line issues like they have. You feel bad for Lane Johnson. I mean, he's been fighting that ankle injury all season long. But again, you throw that in, and of course, the sacks keep going up, and then Carson Wentz keeps going down. So I think a change in play calling is not going to change it because it's not going to. I mean, a change in health would change it.
John Clayton, the Washington Post, he's got 5 contenders that have flaws. Eagles are one of those, by the way. They do lead the division, like it or not. But there's some other interesting teams that are on this list that. The Ravens, I feel like entering the year, and now all of a sudden you entered the year thinking this is another Super Bowl contender. Have they dropped out of that Super Bowl contender conversation?
So I think they definitely have because, I mean, here they are on Thanksgiving in Pittsburgh. If the game does go off, I would assume it's still going to go on. But it's like, they go to Pittsburgh and they don't have anybody in the backfield because Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins are on the COVID's list. They don't have most likely Calais Campbell and Brandon Williams. Without those two, they can't stop the run. So in each of the last 2 games, they've given up 173 yards rushing. And then, of course, their rushing numbers are down. Now they don't have running backs to be able to do anything. I mean, it looks like Lamar Jackson has been figured out a little bit. They have offensive line issues. And so it's very likely that they'll lose that game, be eliminated from the division title, and be in bad shape to try to make the playoffs, particularly, with an AFC that has so many 6 and 7 win teams.
How about the Miami Dolphins? Pretty interesting what they did last week. You have Tua, who they're committed to for the next week, but with the 2-minute drill, they're like, hey, let's go to the veteran.
Yeah, I think that's why I was debating on that because, I think the fatal flaw right now can be Tua because if he plays like he did in this past game and then gets benched, then all of a sudden things start sliding away. Now, again, they're in the easy portion of their schedule right now, and that's why it's vital that they win the games against the easy teams. But you saw how bad it was with a 2013 loss to Denver. That didn't go very well, and he played terrible, only threw for 83 yards. And if that holds them back, particularly as bad as they are stopping the run, then all of a sudden they'll fail that. But again, the great thing for Brian Flores, nobody thought they'd be in a position to be talking playoffs. At least they're talking playoffs, but right now they have to, because once they get past the next 2 games and 8-4, their schedule really gets tough. And then, they're going to be lucky to get to 9 wins.
You wonder if they're watching what's going on and saying, there was another quarterback that possibly we could have got our hands on, and maybe that's their biggest flaw is that they took the wrong guy.
I don't know about that because, again, you look at what Tua was able to do the past 2 weeks. I mean, an incredible comeback victory 2 weeks ago, the great performance that he had against Justin Herbert. I mean, he outperformed Justin Herbert in his 3rd game, and Justin's right now probably moved into the leading category for Rookie of the Year. So because all he does each week is throw for 300 yards, and then, of course, they can't hold on to leads until they lose the games. But overall, I think that, I think it's just sometimes it's tough this rookie year, with 4 starts and that to kind of make a judgment. But he did well for 2, so you can see the potential and the talents there. It's just a matter of the consistency.
All right, another team, by the way. So Miami is a fun team to watch. And then on the NFC side, you got Arizona. But there's starting to be a little, you looking at something out there that maybe they might fizzle out here.
Yeah, the problem is obviously they're great on offense with Kyler Murray, although it's a little bit of a concern because he got battered in the game against Seattle on Thursday night a week ago to a point where he's got an AC joint sprain, and I mean it struggled with his passing, and you could see the pain he was in. He was wincing when he would come off to the sidelines, and then what their big thing is their defensive line because it's a zero. I mean you can't even name. I mean other Josh Morrow is probably the biggest name. Angelo Blackson. I mean, have you seen him in his great days in Houston? And so, they may get Zach Allen back here in the next week or two. That'll help. But the fact that they lost Jacob Phillips, a $10 million defensive lineman, Corey Peters was their best defensive lineman and their best run stopper, and so now they can't stop the run. And that could be something that'll pull them down, particularly when they have the 2 games coming up against the Los Angeles Rams.
John Clayton, the Washington Post. The NFL season continues to roll on, thankfully. We'll see what happens throughout the rest of the season. Of course, the Eagles will be hosting the Seattle Seahawks, a team that you know well, on Monday night. And I guess these two teams seem like they've matched up a bunch in recent years. Seahawks seemingly always get the better of them. We've talked over the last couple of weeks that the Seahawks defense had been a major problem, but they seem to have at least tightened it up for the time being.
Yeah, they got better certainly in the Arizona game, and it's been getting a little bit better each week. They still have the major problems in the secondary, but the biggest thing for them is having that 11-day gap as far as going out and getting a little bit of a rest, because now they should get Shaquille Griffin, their best cornerback, out there. So they won't. They'll be able to get Chris Carson back. I know he was on the practice field today taking snaps with Russell Wilson. So now the running game comes back. Carlos Dunlap has been fantastic. 3.5 sacks in 3 games. Now, Jadeveon Clowney, of course, out here, it's like, you know what it's like in South Philly or South Jersey. It's like, okay, there's always one mantra. If you don't get that thing done, then everybody thinks you're going to lose. Well, here it's like Jadeveon Clowney or bust. And Jadeveon's a real good player, played well last year, but he only had 3 sacks on a team that had 28 sacks. So now Dunlap has 3.5 sacks in 3 games. That's now more than Jadeveon Clowney's had in the last 2 years, because right now he's on injured reserve with no sacks.
John, it's always a pleasure, man. We wish you a happy Thanksgiving, and we always appreciate you jumping on board. Eagles, Seahawks, by the way, Monday night. And, of course, you can hear that game on 97.3 ESPN. And John Clayton, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. John, happy Thanksgiving, pal.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving to you guys.
Great stuff, as always, from the Professor John Clayton right here from the Washington Post on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.